Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Preeti Trivedi, Professor, Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology, Nagpur University. And I'm also an art historian, a little bit of field archaeology, and a little bit of design anthropology. This is my brief introduction. So today's talk is on bees in Indian art and iconography, environmental reflections. It's rather wide, it's rather spread out, but this is one of the methods that I feel that art and iconography in India can be interpreted and studied. Therefore, I have taken this. At the outset, I would be briefing and I would be discussing my concept of art historical studies in India, and I would be expressing my concepts that I have learned over the years of how to approach Indian art and how to study Indian art. Before I come to my topic on bees in Indian art and iconography, there are certain things that I would like to share with you. So, as you can see, the essence of Indian art is beautifully expressed in this verse from the Atharva Veda, which states that Vishwakarta created the earth for the sheer experience of eternal joy. रसेन तृप्तः न कुतश्चनो नः. कहा जाता है कि आनंद के अनुभव के लिए विश्वकर्ता ने सृष्टि की रचना की and gave it an abundance of aesthetic flavor or ras. This perfectly summarizes the spirit of Indian art, for it is perceived as the medium to express prosperity, resplendence, and the entire concept of art is based on the spirit of joy. So, this is the basic idea of Indian art. Then there are several ingresses to the obtainment of rasa. The grace of roop. Hello? Yes? Okay. Should I talk louder or should I talk with hair? Okay. Okay. So, there are several ingresses to the obtainment of rasa, the grace of roop, of form, ethos, and wisdom. Art and literature are the most appealing doors. When we talk about ingresses, we talk about openings or maybe ways, means, media. So, the most appealing doors to experience the exultance of ras. Moreover, nature is full of seamless ras and pran, and the spirit is ever so eager to perceive it. So, the combination of ras, pran, and the spirit of nature is the basic concept of art in India. And it is on this concept that art in India evolved. There are several thoughts which I would like to share with all of you before we begin our conversation on bees in Indian art and iconography, environmental reflections. The effort behind this talk is to understand art as the ultimate expression of human experience, creativity, intelligence, and wisdom. With this frame of reference, art in India is best implied in a dialogue between a king and sage in the Vishnu Dharmottar Puran, a 6th century CE treatise on Indian art and iconography. Now, first, let me tell you what is the Vishnu Dharmottar Puran, because mostly people are talking about the Vishnu Dharmottar Puran, and whenever there is any discussion on art or iconography, the Vishnu Dharmottar Puran is always referred to. So the Vishnu Dharmottar Puran is the treatise which brings together Prakriti, the formlessness of the Supreme Soul, and Vikriti, his various modified forms, perceivable in the universe. What this means is that the idea or the concept behind the art is very sublime, and it talks of the Supreme Soul, but the expression is very, very basic, and it conforms to, or it usually uses very, very real life experiences to express art. Uh, the Vishnu Dharmottar describes the fusion of the imperceivable and visual forms of Vishnu, which can be brought about in sculpture and painting. The word Dharmottar also means that which is chiefly characterized by virtue. So, this is a unique Puran, and this is how it deals. So, there is an episode in this Puran about of a dialogue between a king and a sage. So, the inquisitive king, desirous to understand the meaning of art, is advised by the sage to learn dancing, painting, music, and song. For to appreciate art, it is important to realize its effects in space and time. This is but one example of the approach to art and aesthetics in India, but the true significance of art in India is reflected in the philosophy of the four Purusharthas, that is, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. And more often than not, in fact, moksha, for the attainment of moksha, art is one of the major media. So, the spiritual, aesthetic, the real life experience, everything combined together is the expression, is the way art expresses itself, and this is how, this is also one of the media for attaining moksha. On the other hand, art in India expresses its soul through the tangible world. It brings together all the aspects of the environment, divinity, spirituality, human interactions, emotions, and above all, intense devotion or bhakti. Bhakti is the most important, it's the driving force of Indian art, expressed together to put across the aesthetic form and the symbolic meaning. Both the things put together. Last and the most significant, the art of ancient India principally celebrates life and nature and is constantly interacting with the ephemeral world. So, what the concept or the idea that we get when we take this perspective of studies of Indian art is that there is celebration, there is the the feeling of anand or ultimate joy, and also a very grounded experience of being part of the world, of the tangible world. We now consider the content of Indian art, which can be classified into narrative, iconographic, and thematic in plastic art, and extraordinarily intense and emotive in other forms of visual art. Visual arts means paintings and so on and so forth. There are innumerable texts and treatises which exhaustively deal with the iconography of gods and goddesses. To name a few, we have the Shilpa Ratna, the Mansar Shilpa Shastra, the Vishnu Dharmottar Puran, and Chitra Sutra, which is a part of that, and so on and so forth. And there are so many treatises, almost more than 100 in number. Compiled over several centuries, these texts tell us about the various religious pantheons and the various forms and attributes in which each divinity is portrayed. These portrayals are essentially symbolic and reflect the real life emotions and expressions of faith devotion. So, from abstractions to visible, iconography of Indian gods intrinsically aims to impart important messages to man. Speaking of experiences, the profound interplay Speaking of experiences, the profound interplay of every animate or inanimate object around us is what constitutes the corpus of Indian iconographic forms and themes of art. Trees, insects, animals, earth, sky, wind, fire. You can just very generally say that all the Panchatattvas are reflected in every art form that is created in India. This brings me to the point where I would like to explain the reason for discussing the art and iconography of bees, honeybees in India and the world. It is rather a difficult topic. Bees have always been part of uh, celebrations of spirituality, of religion, of art, and also of day to day practices, even medicine and cure. But there is a difficulty in framing the iconography of the honeybee. It is difficult to identify the iconography of the honeybee in early Indian art. However, their presence in literature, art, and painting is difficult to pass over, considering the spirit with which it is portrayed. Along with this, the environmental relevance of the bee prompts me to do an in depth inquiry into the role of the bee in human environment, nature, and the ultimate order of life. It is very important to understand, as every part that is there of every minuscule part of nature holds its own relevance and its own space in the circle of life. The bee especially has a very important and vital place, because bees symbolize creativity. Bees symbolize continuity of life because of their basic nature of pollination. So therefore, the art and the iconography of bees holds a lot of significance. How were they depicted? How were they understood? How were they studied? And how were they incorporated in the aesthetic themes? The reference to nature here is to emphasize nature, which is pervasive in Indian art from the earliest times, and nature as of man. So I have used this word repeatedly in this sentence with the basic idea to convey that nature, which is broad, and then two aspects of nature, that is nature which is pervasive in Indian art, that is in the form of every living and non-living living being, which is portrayed in the themes of art, and then nature as of man, how man perceives nature. So it is a two-way dialogue which interacts, and the ultimate outcome is the display or the reflection of nature. Evidences of bees inhabiting every part of earth have been found from the Eocene epoch, if not earlier. This I speak because I came across a very interesting paper, which was a research paper, in which the tectonic shifts and the making of the Indian subcontinent and certain things that were found while excavating certain areas, something like amber. So, when this excavation took place, some pieces of amber were found. I hope you people must be familiar with amber. So, the organisms that were found in that, when they were studied, then the existence of different species of bees were found. And out of these, some were found not native to India. But I digress from the topic. But then I feel that every aspect is important when you study art. So certain species of bees were found in those pieces of amber. So we come back to the bees. Their social existence has provided the only non-perishable edible food, that is honey. Being comparatively superior pollinators, bees are also considered vital for the subsistence of our ecosystem. I think all of you must be knowing what I'm saying, and you must be understanding perfectly that bees are very, very vital for nature and for the environment. These virtues of the little arthropods were keenly observed by man from prehistoric times and included in his lifestyle for food, medicine, rituals, and also for aesthetics and spirituality. So these are 5 types of bees which are found in India. Out of this, Apis dorsata, then Apis cerana indica, and Apis florea, or the dwarf bee. These have been inherently part of the Indian environment right from the beginning. But Apis mellifera, or the Italian bee, and the stingless bee, they somehow came from outside through various agencies, maybe environmental agencies, human agencies, or so on and so forth. So these are 5 beautiful bees, and out of this, I must mention that Apis dorsata and Apis cerana are very important, because most of the perception of the nature of bees fits into their lifestyle, which we will discuss as we move ahead. So now we come to the earliest depiction of bees in art. Of course, rock art. This is a very beautiful picture, and I have been able to get it from a PhD thesis of Urmi Ghosh. It is a picture taken by herself to print it in her PhD thesis. So this animated painting from the rock shelter of Panar Pani brings to life a prehistoric scene of honey collection. So it is an extremely animated picture in which one person is trying to escape. The other one is pointing to the beehive, and a line of bees are running on the other direction. So it is one of the most beautifully painted scene of honey collection, where the people are trying to catch hold of the beehive, but the sting of the bees, they are trying to protect themselves from the sting of the bees at the same time. This fascination for bees reflects in Indian art from the prehistoric times. The prehistoric rock paintings from Mahadev Hills in central India, which is Pachmadi, depicts the beehive, swarms of honeybees, and honey extraction activities of humans. This is not just for Mahadev Hills, actually. In fact, prehistoric art or rock art, any part of the world, you must, and it is always, bees are essentially and by habitually they are depicted. So similar rituals and shamanic practices related to bees, honey, and honeycombs are also found in some rock paintings from Orissa. The Baiga tribes of Mandla. Now this is, I'm just relating the prehistoric rock art with a current practice which is continuing almost from those times. The Baiga tribe is a very, very special tribe, because in spite of them being humans, they relate more to nature, to the jungles, to animals, to insects, and everything that comprises of nature. So these people in the Mandla region, they celebrate this Ras Nava festival of ceremonially eating honey. Of course, there are stories, very interesting stories, where in the Rasnava ritual, uh, they get together, they worship the honey bee, and then they go harvest honey, and then they share it with some kind of a preparation which could be likened to meat. So then they mix this honey with meat and then they consume it. So now this was a brief thing which, of course, I will be going to the tribal practices, the current practices again at the end of my talk. But here I had to mention it because of the uh, theme of depicting bees in rock art. The Veda mentions honeybees among other arthropods. We find so many extensive references to bees, their nature, and classification of bees. So they have been mentioned extensively, not just from an entomological point of view, but from every aspect, which in which it is shown, it can be understood that the bees were already part of the human society. Ancient Indian literature mainly comprises of the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Purans, epics like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, poetry and plays written by Sanskrit scholars, especially Kalidas and Banbhatta. Playwrights of ancient India give significant entomological information related to honeybees. The Rig Veda refers to the king bee. Now, in India, right from the earliest times, there was no concept of queen bee. There was only the concept of the king bee. And the king bee had his entire colony to assist him. So when the king perished, the colony perished. When the king moved from one place to the other, the colony moved. And these such experiences have been mentioned in several instances in these ancient texts. The honeybees in general are said to be gifted with four senses of sight, smell, taste, and touch, and are excellent pollinators. See, the classification of insect population has been done into six categories by, especially by in the Manusmriti, and in that, some insects, most of the insects have been attributed with just two senses, but bee is one insect or arthropod which has all the four senses. This makes its sensitivity to the environment very heightened, and that is why it is more endangered and it is easily destroyable also. Let us now move to the bees in art and iconography during the early historical period. The Devi Mahatmya of the Markandeya Puran extensively describes the various forms of Shakti or Durga. Among the other forms, she is also mentioned as Brahmari or Brahmaramba, having the form of the bee. Now, here there is a small thing which I will be discussing again later when I go to the iconography and the art part. Uh, see, Brahmara is Bhaura. So, whether Brahmari, they are called, commonly also called the black bee, and it doesn't essentially mean the honey bee. So, Brahmari or Brahmaramba, maybe one of her iconographic attributes was just the group of insects which can be put in the category of bees, whether they are honey bees, black bees, or other flying insects. The Rig Veda has several references to bees and honey. The Atharva Veda contains a hymn for the Ashwins, the twins of health and healing. These two brothers are very relevant, and in today's time, when we are facing such grave um, issues of pandemic and so on and so forth, the Ashwins of the twins of health and healing hold a lot of importance and significance, which could also constitute another topic of research. So, the Atharva Ved contains a hymn for the Ashwins, the twins of health and healing, which indicates the strength giving qualities of honey. O Ashwins, lords of brightness, anoint me with honey of the bee that I may speak forceful speech among men. That means honey in the Atharva Ved or in this verse is basically uh, denoting that honey was considered to be almost a strength giving substance. And Ashwins always heal and give strength, and honey is one of the main ingredients that they use in treating a person. Pran, the personification of the universal life force, is sometimes shown surrounded by a circle of life giving, life sustaining bees. This is so important. The iconography, we have not come across any depiction of Pran, at least I haven't, and I would be happy if I come across some visual depiction of Pran. But his iconography includes this aspect that he is always shown surrounded by a circle of life-giving, life-sustaining bees. Krishna is also sometimes depicted as the bee god Madhusudan, the divine bee of loving mellows. So here, this is a very interesting book written by a very interesting person, and in that she has dealt with the just a moment. Yeah. So in that book, she has taken these illustrations from an earlier book. The reference is already given there in the picture. The description of the bee and the association of bee with Shiva and Vishnu has prompted the artist to create these illustrations. These are not actually art forms as such, but to make people understand that how is the bee related to Shiv or the bee related to Vishnu. So the in the Shiva aspect, the bee is seen sitting on a triangle, and the bee itself is Shiva. The triangle is, of course, the female reproductive aspect. And then in Vishnu, as a blue bee on a lotus flower. So sometimes in iconography also, Madhusudana, then Manmatha, then Kamdev, and all these gods and aspects of Vishnu, they are shown sometimes, even if they are not shown, they in their iconography it is described that they should have the blue bee on their forehead. The gods Vishnu, Krishna, and Indra were called Madha, or the nectar born ones, born of nectar, born of honey, born of that imperishable food source. It is so symbolic. Vishnu is represented as a blue bee resting on a lotus flower. The lotus flower is an ancient symbol of life, of resurrection, of nature whose power slumbers until the warmth and light of the sun calls it to life. So this lady, Hilda Ransom, if you could ever get hold of this book and read it, it is one of the most interesting books I have come across. So now we come to the iconographic, tangible, Puranic aspect of bees. This is a very beautiful hand painted lithograph, and it shows the very popular story of Kamdev risking his life to revive the spirit of emotion, love in Shiva after the immolation of Sati. It is also, this episode is given in several Puranas, Markandeya Puran, and of course most extensively in the Shiv Puran. So we see Sati sitting in front of Shiv, who is very angry, and in anger he opens his third eye to immolate Kamdev. Kamdev, who is trying to hide behind the bush, is holding a bow and arrow. The bow is of sugarcane, and the arrow is made of a string of bees. A very beautiful painting indeed. It was after Sati burned herself that the sorrowing Shiv was wounded by Kamdev, the love god, whom he slew by causing a flame of fire to dart from his third eye. This god is the son of Vishnu and Lakshmi. He is usually depicted as a comely youth like the Egyptian Khonsu. He shoots flowery arrows from his bow. His wife Rati symbolizes the spring, the cuckoo, the humming bee, and the soft winds. As Manmat, he is the mind disturber. And because of this nature of Kamdev on Manmat, that Shiv was angered to the extent that he immolated Kamdev. As Mara, the wounder, we've heard of Mara, the demon Mara. As Madan, he who makes one love drunk. I mean, the nectar, the ambrosia, or the honey. So Madan, and we also know of the Madan Mahotsav, which is celebrated in India, which used to be celebrated in India at the time when honey was harvested from the forests. And as Pradyumna, he is the all conqueror, because ultimately you conquer by these finer instincts and not by war. Now we come to, I had referred to Brahmari earlier, and now we come to Brahmari, because whenever the discussion arose of the iconographic form of the bee, there was always the mention of Brahmari Devi. This is an image of Brahmari, as it's given there, Janasthan Shakti Peeth at Nasik, and it is a Shakti Peeth, so obviously there has to be the accompaniment of Bhairav is essential there. So the aspect of Bhairav depicted here in this temple is the Vikritaksha Bhairav. Another epigraph which was found datable to the Gupta period, later Gupta period, was found built into a niche of a temple of Brahmara Mata in Udaipur. It records the construction of a temple of Devi Durga. Now it is called Brahmara Mata, but in the inscription it mentions that the temple was made for Durga. Incidentally, Brahmara is the vernacular form of Brahmari or Brahmara, Brahmari or Brahmari, which is one of the epithets of the mother goddess. The goddess Brahmari also finds mention in the Devi Mahatmya of Markandeya Puran, where the goddess herself states that she will appear in the 60th Yug to slay the demon Arunasur with the help of a swarm of wasps, Brahmaras, and in that form she will be called Brahmari. So here we have both the references of Markandeya Puran, which is much earlier, many centuries earlier than the Devi Bhagavad Puran, which is also cited here. In the Markandeya Puran, Devi mentions her Brahmar or Brahmari aspect as futuristic. In the Devi Bhagavad Puran, which is of much later date, the story of Arunasur Vad is given in detail, and some iconographic aspects of Brahmari are also given. I say some because, of course, the basic anthropomorphic form is of Devi Durga, a beautiful maiden, but certain aspects are added to distinguish Durga from Brahmari. Arunasur was a, what should I say? In common parlance, I can say that he was a hater of the gods, and he was so antagonistic towards them that he prayed and prayed and prayed, which is usually there in every story in the Puran, and he somehow extracted a boon from Brahma, in which he stated that no four-legged, no eight-legged creature should kill him. No two-legged, no four-legged creature should kill him. No male, no female, nor a synthesis of these two should be able to slay him. And after this boon, of course, he brought about so much of destruction and so much of chaos and so on and so forth. So, to slay him, the form of Brahmari was taken up by Durga, in which she, as per the description, she's supposed to be shown with 6 legs, usually bees of any type, whether black bees or honey bees, they have 6 legs, and she is slaying. She has 4 arms, and she's shown. She's supposed to be slaying the. She's supposed to have slain the demon Arunasur. In the most important and vital book for iconographic studies of J.N. Banerjee, Development of Hindu Iconography, this description of the Devi Mahatmya of Markandeya Puran is given, and in that when he translates the text of the Puran or the Devi Mahatmya, he says that with the help of a swarm of wasps or bhramaras. So here there is no mention of the honeybee, but just bees in general. Yes, now we come to the most interesting aspect of the depiction of bees in Indian art and iconography. These are 2 paintings of the 16th century. I acknowledge taking them from the archives of the British Museum. These are part of a manuscript which describe, of course on paper, not on palm leaf or any other media, and this manuscript describes the Madan Mahotsav or the Vasanta Utsav as it is known. See, over a period of time, this aspect of iconography and art and social life also was gaining much more of popularity with the people. In the south, this manuscript was discovered from Tanjore probably, but the provenance is not very clear, and it shows a mock war or a mock fight between Manmath and Rati. And as you can see, that Rati is mounted on a bird-like figure made with 5 maidens, whereas Manmath or Kamdev is mounted on also on a bird-like figure made of 3 maidens. I failed to understand the significance of this, and I have not come across any description of this kind of a mount. So I'll proceed further. The string of the bow is very interesting. Of course, the bow is made of sugarcane, but the string is made of honeybees for both. And of course, in the case of Kamdev or Manmath, there is an arrow of 5 flowers which he uses to to entice a person into the more lively pleasures. Okay, so these are also depictions of Kama and Rati. They're very interesting. I'll go back to them. These are handmade paintings. Then of special mention are also the plays of Kalidas, especially Abhigyan Shakuntalam, then Meghadutam and Raghuvansham, because in these three plays, bees and honeybees and the taste of honey and blossoms and spring has been mentioned repeatedly. Especially in the case of Abhigyan Shakuntalam, you must be, if you are familiar with the storyline of this play, then you must be knowing that Shakuntala was being troubled by the bee in the forest when Dushyant came. And Dushyant, who was already afflicted by the arrow of Kamdev, was smitten by the beauty of Shakuntala, and that is how one episode led to the other, and Bharat was born, the son or Bharat, after whom India is named. The famous Indian poet states thus, that is, Kalidas states thus: a stalwart soldier comes the spring who bears the bow of love, and on that bow the lustrous string is made of bees, weaves a string of bees with deft invention to speed the missile when the bow is bent. So, the soldier here is actually Kamdev, that only he is bold enough to do such audacity. The Shilparatna and the Vishnu Dharmotar give their own versions of the iconography of Kamdev and Manmat. I have included Kamdev and Manmat here because of uh, their intense association with the bees. However, his iconography underwent a great change in the course of centuries. What you saw earlier is actually, in the earlier slides, is actually the later version of Kamdev. This could be due to the rising popularity of the spring festival from the 15th century onwards. Manmat or Kamdev and Rati are frequently depicted together both in sculpture and painting of the Vijayanagar Nayaka and even sometimes the Maratha period, to a certain extent Maratha period, as it is given here. Kam, the Indian god of love, carries a bow. Like Eros in Greece, we have several depictions of Eros in Greek art, made up of a chain of bees, the arrows of love, often causing pain as well as pleasure, like the sting in the tail of the bee. So now these are certain depictions of Kam and Rati, or Kamdev and Rati, or Manmat and Rati, whatever. On the right side is the 8th century sculpture from the Sundarvarada Perumal temple. It is on the Viman, and here it shows Manmat and Rati standing straight, looking in front, and of course Kamdev's hand is broken, but Rati is probably holding a bowl with honey in it, or whatever it may be. The other sculpture is from Khajuraho, from the Parshvanath temple of a much later date, that is 13th century. And here the entire countenance of Manmat and Rati changes. As you can see, Kam is holding the five flowered arrow in his left hand, and the right hand is holding the bow made of sugarcane, and Rati is looking at him. So the entire countenance, the entire spirit of the sculpture of the 8th century to the 13th century changes, and this is how we can also perceive how the concept of Kamdev and Rati, the perception of Kamdev and Rati changed from the early medieval period to the medieval period. Now we come to the Rasik Priya, a text by Keshav Dasa. This is a miniature painting. It is indeed very beautiful. Radha surrounded by bees. Now, as I told you earlier, Vishnu, because of his beauty, or Krishna, because of his beauty, he is always surrounded by bees, because bees are attracted to anything that is extremely beautiful and attractive, colorful, fragrant. So, this particular depiction of Radha, who is actually lifting her chunari with both hands to cover herself, to protect herself from the bees, is so beautiful. And her attendant is just standing there helplessly. Krishna and the milkmaid from the Gita Govind. This is also a very beautiful picture. We can see honeybees here surrounding Krishna and buzzing around the entire scene while Krishna plays the flute. A scene depicts, now this is the Chaur Panchashika. Chaur Panchashika means the 50 tales of theft, amorous thefts, written by Bilhan in the 11th century. Very interesting manuscript, one of the most beautiful collections of Indian miniature and manuscript paintings are found in these manuscripts. So a scene depicts the swarm of bees abandoning the large lotus in the pond to swarm over Champavati, who's the protagonist in the story. So attracted are they to her charm and beauty. They are leaving the lotus and they are rushing towards the beauty, or the beauty and the what should you say, the liveliness of Champavati. So these were a few depictions of art, bee and bees in art, bees in iconography, their essence, their spirit, and the reason for which they were included or they were depicted in anything which was of aesthetic value or which was an artist's creation. Now, I would briefly like to deal with some depictions of bees in other civilizations. In Egypt, the bee played a very important role. We may have heard that in one of the pyramids, excavated pyramids, huge urns full of honey were found. And over these hundreds of years, the honey was as it is and it had not gone bad. It was still edible and it retained its original freshness. So, honey was used, the wax of the honeybee was used, then honeybees were used as emblems of royal insignia, which you can see here. Then this is also from Egypt, a lintel and of a main entrance at Karnak near Luxor in Egypt. This is the cartouche of Ramses II, and it has depicted the bees very prominently next to what is known as the typical Egyptian symbol. And these are a few musings on how the Egyptians perceived the bee and how what they related to the bees. Bees, flies, and dung beetles were among the most significant insects in ancient Egypt, while the bee was not only known as a hardworking producer of honey and wax, it could also symbolize the king, the title of the king, Lord of Upper and Lower Egypt. This is how he's referred to. Then we also have the Minoans who gave central place to the bee goddess, the queen bee, as against the king bee in India. The bee was perceived in the feminine form in the Minoan kingdom. This is how it was. This is a small, I could hardly get any illustrations for this, but then somehow I got hold of this. So this is the bee-headed goddess from Knossos, Crete, 1500 BCE. Then bee goddess from Camaros, Rhodes. This is a very popular picture. I have taken it from the internet. You can also look for it. And as you can see, the bee is shown here with wings, 2 arms, and 2 flowers, 2 blossoms on both the sides. So this is, they have found several plaques like this, and these particular plaques are placed in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. So now we discussed the concept of Indian art. Then we discuss the concept of Indian art with iconography. Then we came to the depiction of the bee in various forms and media of art in India, then in the world. And now we come to almost the last segment of my talk, where I would like to refer to folklore and tribal practices between bees and humans. So this is a small video that I want to show, where you can hear the kualu instrument being played, which mimics the sound of the bee. And this was played by the tribe before they embarked upon honey harvesting, when they had to indulge in a very elaborate ritual to appease the bees. I will play it again with the sound. I'll play it again for you.
The music of the handmade kualu echoes the drone of the bees.
So an instrument was specially devised to attract the bees before harvesting honey from their honeycombs. I would like to go to this is the second slide. Now, what I showed you earlier was the Kurumba Honey Hunt Festival, which is celebrated in South in the Nilgiris. And before the ritual, they have to embark upon, before harvesting the honey, they have to perform a very elaborate ritual. And this is a small snippet of that.
The procession to the cliff top begins. Rasu the priest has been on a fast all day. The men must bow to the spirits that protect the bees. A 1,000-year-old tradition comes alive as these men beseech the rock bees to leave their combs, asking them to return the next season to complete the cycle of pollen, nectar, and fertility. The forest gods are also invoked to bless the honey hunting and keep the Kurumbas safe.
So you heard a small folk song also in this video, which was sung along with the ritual. Now we'll go to another video.
The procession to the cliff top begins. Rasu the priest has been on a fast all day. The men must bow to the spirits that protect the bees. 1,000-year-old tradition comes alive as these men beseech the rock bees to leave their combs, asking them to the procession.
I'm sorry, I played the earlier one again. Now there is another video. In this video, you can see a cliff with several honeycombs on it, and this one particular cliff is always left aside, and the honey from these hives is never harvested. This cliff is left as it is with the intention to conserve and preserve the bees and not use up all the honey for commercial or personal purposes, which is a very, very important aspect of this ritual and of the practices of the Kurumba tribe. So they want to preserve the bee colony also.
Cliffs like the Kalahati and Pichikeni are worshipped as sacred honey rocks. The colonies here are left untouched by all honey hunters, a traditional system of preserving gene pools. Pichikeni is revered for the spirit of a legendary woman honey hunter. Challenged to harvest a treacherous cliff by her male rivals, she was betrayed by them. Consumed by jealousy, they severed the ladder as she was climbing up, and she plunged to her death. Even today, the Kurumbas atone for this treason by worshipping this cliff.
These are some very interesting. Now this is a Kurumba painting. It is a very interesting traditional folk Kurumba painting where the same cliff is depicted beautifully. The overhanging cliff with the honeybees, with the honeycombs and the beehives. It is, this particular aspect shows that the Kurumbas were this particular thing was the main source of their sustenance. So therefore they worshipped it, they adored it, and they feared it, and they also preserved it and conserved it. This is very important because now several practices are coming into honey harvesting. They have already come, and so many bee colonies have been destroyed, where the desire to earn more leads to harvesting each and every beehive which is there, and harvest as much of honey as possible to get more and more of financial resources. But somehow, if we could learn from these people and we could conserve and preserve and even protect their tangible and intangible heritage, it would be a very important thing or a contribution towards nature and environment. This is also a very interesting human bee connection. One of the oldest motifs of the Toda tribe embroidery, I failed to pronounce it correctly, but still nevertheless I'll try. Quadricor pukur, or the honeycomb pattern. This depicts the inside of the honeycomb and is sometimes even embroidered with the brood shown within. As you can see here, this. Here it is written as Kunkor Pohor. I mean, it's spelled differently. Its importance lies in the fact that this was done traditionally only on the cloak of the departed, so as to ensure a safe passage to the world. Because the bee, of course, personifies life, but the bee is also considered to be a protector of nature, of earth, of environment, and of life and life beyond, and life beyond death, as we can also see in the Egyptian civilization. And this is a small illustration of the Zemi Nagas performing the Zemi dance, where uh, their body movements depict the movements of the bees and the hornbill. So this is also a very interesting aspect of our intangible heritage. Now I come to the concluding part and the sad part. During my research, I came across this paper, very well written by a scientist and published in the Current Science. In my article, I have referred to it, and I have not given the reference in the presentation here. The dwindling population leading to mass extinction of the honeybees. Why the practice by the tribals and even our ancients, when a little bit of honey was left in the hive, because the honeys go back to imbibe the honey again. They are attracted to things which are fragrant and sweet. And these are pictures of garbage bins kept outside tea and coffee shops all over the country. When you have a cup of coffee or tea, you throw it in the bin with a little residue of the sweet tea or coffee remaining in it. Attracted by the sweet smell, the bees come here, they swarm it. You may have seen something like this also, sometimes sitting outside a tea shop or a cafe. And after satiating them, satisfying them with the sweet drink, they do not go back to the plants and the trees. So the process or the cycle of pollination is interrupted. And this is happening, and this is leading to a very major disaster, which is known as the colony collapse disaster. So when we study art, iconography, archaeology, so on and so forth, anthropology, so many aspects, there are so many good things that we come to know. We also know of certain wrong practices which brought about disaster. We are facing one very critical state at this time all over the world. So these things are actually these little insects, in some way, they have managed to educate man in so many different ways. They have educated man spiritually, aesthetically. They have taught man to appreciate nature, and they have taught man to be happy, to be blissful. There are so many aspects that have been taught by the honeybee here. So I conclude with this, and I open myself to any questions that may be. Thank you for your time. Yeah. So there is this question from Margaret Ayana Anthony, and the question is regarding the connection of bees with life after death. So, as you have yourself mentioned in your next question, that it is because honey is non-perishable, so it will provide the food for sustenance in the journey beyond death. So it is because of that that it is connected to this ritual. And honey was always used in the Antyashti Sanskar. Even today, and even in the ritual described in the Shatapatha Brahman, the honey is one of the main items that are used in the ritual. So this is it. Then it is also pure. It is supposed to be the essence of life and earth. So that is also one of the reasons why honey is always included in such rituals. Then I am grateful to Vadekar madam for her suggestion. Thank you so much, and I will definitely include it. And I think she also had the same query regarding the linking of honeybees and honey with life after death. Then in Sundarban, there is a similar ritual. Hunters take blessings from local gods. Please go through by Shilpa Vadikar. Thank you so much, madam. I will definitely do that. Actually, in this PPT, and because of the time factor, I could not include so many other tribal rituals and folklore related to honey. It is a massive chapter actually once you get into that, and it could be taken up as a separate topic of research itself. Thank you for telling me about these. I will include these. I only took the rituals which were very offbeat, like the Kurumbas and the embroidery part, and of course the Naga tribal ritual. They are always unique. The Nagas have very unique practices. So that is why I limited myself in including every. In fact, only in central India, leave alone the Baigas, there are so many tribes and they all have their own rituals. And in the best part of these rituals is that whatever material and whatever things that they include in performing these rituals, they are all natural and part of the jungle or wildlife habitat. That is the most beautiful part. So it is actually a celebration of environment and earth, the way they perform these rituals. Okay. Any other questions? Now there is a small thought that I want to share with so many archaeologists and art historians here. I have always been very interested in doing a cross-disciplinary study. And art for me is not just something that is beautiful or aesthetic. And I have always crossed over. I have even crossed over boundaries to commerce, to science, and to so many other disciplines, and brought so many things together. So this particular topic here is just one aspect of the study which can be taken. And in future also, if such studies are taken, so many new insights can be documented and researched regarding the thought process of our ancients, how what were their limitations, what were they dreading, what were they loving, what were they adoring, and what were they getting angry with. So maybe if this in-depth psychoanalytical aesthetic anthropological study, if everything is put together in interpreting art, it could give many fruitful answers to things about which we are usually surmising these days. And uh, it is my endeavor to study more such topics as long as I can, and I hope to God to, I pray to God to give me many more such opportunities. Small aspects like the honeybee, it was never personified actually, as we discussed in our presentation, but the honeybee was so important, so vital in its presence in the theme of art. So there are so many such small aspects which are shown in art, but they usually don't get the attention that they should be given. So this is all that I have to say. And if there are any more queries, I'll be happy to answer them. Bees evidence of any temples in India. So Mr. Ramakant Pradhan wants to know if there is any evidence of bees in any temples in India. No, I just referred to that temple of Brahma Devi, right? I referred to that, but that is a name given, and now the people worship the deity installed therein as the god or the goddess, the bee goddess. But I haven't come across any such example as yet. I mean, it would be really heartening to get such example, but not too many. Yes, in themes, yes, especially in the narrative art of the early centuries, late pre-Christian and early Christian centuries, um, uh, say the what we classify as Maurya Shunga period and Satavahana period and all. So yes, in the themes we do sometimes chance upon a small depiction of the bee. So there is a question from by Rai Catcher. Have you considered bees in Indian literature? Of course, of course. We referred to so much of corpus of literature in our talk, and yes, bees have always been part of Ayurvedic literature, of religious literature, and of course, I referred to just Banbhatt and Kalidas, but there are so many um, uh, poets and dramatists who have referred to uh, bees and incorporated bees in different aspects um, in their own writings. For instance, the 7th century Tamil Shivite text, Thevaram and Kotumbi is asked to be the royal bee. Oh, this is very interesting. Thank you so much for telling me. This is really interesting. I will definitely check into it. So, is this particular literature, um, is this particular literature available in Hindi, English, or any other common language? Or because that is a limitation, there is so much of wisdom in our local languages, regional languages, and it doesn't reach us. So, if there are translations, I'll be happy. Thank you. Vicheza Kenna Access Mundi in Divan and Khas can we relate with ancient culture? I will have to. Okay, Shivani, thank you for this question. I would. I can't answer now, but I would definitely like to see this pillar which resembles a bee. And let's see if there could be illustrations available, we could see those later. Fatehpur Sikri. Fatehpur Sikri. Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. I will definitely go through this text, Thevaram. Thank you so much. It's very interesting. It has really intrigued me. Why is it we see several hives in one tree? Okay, so there is this question from Rekha Rao. Actually, more than me answering this, an environmentalist would be, or an environmental scientist would be better able to answer this. Anyway, there is the bees always inhabit one tree. It is there are several factors because of that. Because if the tree has branches which are very convenient, see, you will never see a hive on a vertical or an angular branch. It has to be there has to be some kind of horizontality in that. That is why in banyan trees we find, and even in people trees we find beehives, because the branches are always, growing at an angle. And as I showed you in the Kurumba tribe video, that cliff is also, the top portion of that cliff is also horizontal. So for the bee, for the hive to hang, it is easy, and it is the way they make their hive. So that is why the beehive has to hang basically. So that is why they go to the trees which are convenient, which also provide a lot of shade protection, and also not shade but then protection, and they are also high up beyond the reach. So the bees, as I told you, that they are among the very few insects which have all the four senses, so they can perceive, they understand that what they are making and what they are doing will be invaded by other elements. So they always go for such places which are generally inaccessible. That's it. Okay, so thank you for your questions. Thank you for being there to listen. And I have had a very enjoyable experience interacting with you people. Thank you so much.